setting up my microphone as you do. Last minute. How are we doing? How are we feeling? Are we vibing? Are we not vibing? Let me lower the volume of the music for you. Let me lower the volume of the music for you. Is that any better? I hope it's better. Is that any better? I hope so. I hope so. Students, please go to your homerooms, grab your answer sheets, grab your number 2 pencils. If you do not have a number 2 pencil, ask your friend to let you borrow one, because we're going to start class at Hoots School for Baby Owls. Yes, that's right. That's right. Oh, there we go. Hello. 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 Oh. Okay. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm going to be co-working. I'm going to be doing like a lot of stuff today. Um, I'm going to be AFK here and there. I'm going to be muting. I'm going to be unmuting. You will know that I am muted because this little thing here is either going to have a I can talk, I can talk sign or not. You will know. You will know when I'm available and when I'm not. So let me go somewhere else. Let's go to the beach. Let's go to the wave. Yep. And we can sit here. I don't think we can. We should wear something appropriate for the beach. Yeah.
Mambo, mambo, お祭りマンボダブダブゆらゆらお祭りマンボ
I want to be here and I'm gonna use the meditate, but I'm not really going to be meditating. I'm gonna be, doing my chores. But I just think it's very cute. Mambo. So I will be seeing you in a little bit. I'll be seeing you in a little bit. I'm just going to work on myself. See you in a while. See you in a while. I will have my phone next to me, so I will be checking chat regularly. Also, I will really appreciate if you can follow me on TikTok, so I can have 50 followers, so I can unlock streaming over here. Yes. Until then, let's work hard. On a mute.
I don't want peace. I want problems, always.
¡Coño, carajo, hijo de la puta mierda! ¿Qué es lo que dije aquí? Que si algo está pasando, que tú me tienes que decir.
Beautiful people, I am back. Big news, I am back. Yes, that's right. Hello. Hi. Hello.
Mambo, mambo, お祭りマンボウ。ダブダブ、ゆらゆら、お祭りマンボウ。
I'm a little laggy, but I think it's because I'm doing simulcast and OBS sees a hungry hippo and it's consuming many resources, I would like to believe. I think that's why. I think that's why we're a little laggy on the live 2D, on the B-Tube Studio department. Yeah. So I made breakfast. I decided that I get really hungry in the mornings as of lately, so I'm going to start doing my fasting from 8:30, 8:40 to 6:30, 6:40. Because it's still a window of 8 hours plus 16 of fasting. Yeah, it's like from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's like breakfast, lunch, dinner. Like, it's fine, you know. It's like I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. So I have my eggies, I have my eggs. I made like 3 because I'm just really hungry. I don't know what it is. I'm just really hungry, and I've been eating a whole lot. And I would like an appetite suppressant. If anyone wants to gift me an appetite suppressant vitamin pills thing, I will gladly accept it because I really need some. Because I don't think anyone can get me my $600 pre-diabetes medication. Yeah. How are you doing? So good. Sometimes a man needs to make toast with butter. Sometimes you gotta make some toast. Yeah, it's necessary. Good. I'm gonna chocolate chippy, but I have to add to my Trello because I already forgot. tasty. Any plans for today, people? Any plans on this beautiful Friday? Scammers calling me? I don't think so. I fucking think so. Work? What y'all doing after work? Gonna play with friends, gonna play some games. Gonna play some games. You're gonna hang out with people. I'm gonna be playing some Apollo Justice. Having a bit of downtime so working recognition, that's lovely. Let's go. Do let me know how the tablet, how the iPad feels. Oh my, I'm so tempted to get an iPad, man. Please do. If you can do that for me, I will really appreciate it. It's just that I'm in the middle of teaching. But if you can do that, I will really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so transparent rope. I think I can do that right now. I only need one hand to do that. One hand to eat and one hand to work. That's the ideal. Oh. Why is my cat crying? She's not getting in. She wants to beg for food and she's not going to get any of this food. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Ow. TPA from. There we go. There we go. I added both things. Let's go. We did one task today. No. I've done more. I took a shower. I put a load of laundry. I made food. I am eating. There's a lot. No, thanks to you. Okay. You're not getting it in? Oh my god, the creature! The creature! Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I'm back. I wanna... Do we wanna watch videos or do we want to just vibe to the jazz music? Do let me know. Let's poll it. Let's poll it. Poll. Hi, back. Videos. YouTube videos or BG music. Boom. Ah, god damn it. Videos or I'm giving you a minute to vote. Cast your votes. Oh, 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 oh. Woo. Oh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I um I will let you do something tonight. Mm. Mm. But I don't know why. Um. Mm. I I would like a date tonight. If only if only a big honky handsome guy took me on a virtual date. Oh man. If only. Yeah. If only a big handsome guy took me on a date to watch some WWE. Oh well. Oh, we have a tie. It's 1-1. What are we gonna do? Hey, let's play videos. Yeah, let's do that. Let's just play videos. Mm. Mm. No, I don't want to watch this video. No, 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 no. I want to watch this. You wanna watch? Mhm. There's a lot of there's a lot of doomerism, a lot of sad stuff, and I don't know. I don't like it. In my in my I guess my AWAF if bleh, in my For You page of YouTube, there's a lot of really sad stuff. I don't want to watch it. Mm? Oh no. Is this yaoi? It looks like yaoi art style. It looks cute. That's my type. I mean, what? No. I don't know. I don't see anything that will call me. Don't see anything that would like attract me to oh no, there's nothing interesting here. There's nothing for me. Oop. Ooh. Oh my god. There's nothing to watch. Scrolls past 100 videos. There's nothing to watch. Actually, this is an interesting thing. Let's watch if it looks up. So,
So, like 3 weeks ago, as of writing this, Netflix posted the opening credits animation for the DMC anime, And what caught my attention was a thumbnail, which is a part at 028 in the video. And my first thought is, why does this jug look like wild Kratts?
Trolling. Have you ever looked at a piece of artwork or animation that's supposedly anime, but you could immediately tell whether
And you could immediately tell whether it was drawn by a Westerner or an Easterner. I would call this phenomenon imitation anime. In order to illustrate my point, I'll conduct a test on you, lay viewer.
Okay.
Before you are 14 images. Some of them are from Japanese studios, while the others are from imitation anime producing studios. If you don't care about this, you can skip this. But like, if you want to do this, I will proceed to pull up each of these images full view one by one, and you just comment down below if they're Japanese made or not. And if you know the source, just say you know the source.
Japanese, American, Japanese, Japanese, American, Japanese.
Now, let's see how well you did. Drawing anime isn't easy. I know. I therefore do not think missing the mark is an inherently bad thing. I absolutely love Avatar: The Last Airbender, and the deviation from the authentic anime art style is part of its identity. But it bothers me when Western media will market this stuff as anime, and oh, guess what? It's Studio Mir, and then I get Voltron Legendary Defender Shell Shock. There are about like 4 major anime productions I've looked into that have this deviation from the anime style. And I know that Studio Mir is a Korean studio, but for some reason their style from time to time falls back into this pattern of facial feature detailing and placement that many Western animated media has. I think this comes from them having adapted a lot of Marvel comics, though. A friend of mine tells me that these studios aren't really doing whatever they want. They're just doing whatever the streaming services commissioning them ask for, and the streaming services are the ones calling it anime, which, you know, Mir actually has a really good take on the anime style, which is in Star Wars Visions 2. At first, I saw the Google images, and I still thought it fell back into the same habits of drawing Western faces, but I was honestly just nitpicking because once I watched it, I would see that they would be much more consistent and more accurate to the anime style. So it's clear that they have the competency and capability to pull off the anime style unless it costed more budget. But it does seem like the companies commissioning them are at blame.
Okay.
But even with these other studios, and let me just pull something up, you can see that there's something weird about the characters' faces that isn't entirely anime. And this isn't exclusive to the industry either. Many online artists from America that attempt to draw anime will usually settle for this imitation or kind of hybrid mix, which is like either the Tumblr anime style or the DeviantArt anime style. I don't know. I spent a month trying to figure out what does this, and some research and observations and inadvertently stumbling across the LOL icon's ring has led me to figuring it out. Western artists or Western marketed studios imitating anime tend to draw anatomy simpler than Japanese artists do when drawing these seemingly flat shapes. The shapes in anime are more complex and specific than one would realize at first, and I do think that this misconception comes from the generic anime style's tendency to not shade the face whatsoever. However, even a young baka gaijin like me some few years back was able to look at an anime art tutorial and tell it kind of seems weird. But to be fair, the only reason I was able to tell a lot was because I studied the fundamentals, and I'm talking perspective, form, anatomy, gesture. And I already was a weeb at this time, so I wanted to draw anime faces. And knowing what I do now about the facial planes, see in mangas and anime where the artists have this knowledge of how to draw a real face, but they're purposefully making it subtle. And my inspirations would range from like a Chainsaw Man, The Promised Neverland, Jujutsu Kaisen, Vinland Saga, Attack on Titan, and as of recently Frieren. We don't talk about that one. But the biggest correlation between all of these, in my opinion, is how you can tell the faces
Okay, I'm going to
have
start
genuine
working.
form to them and aren't.
Pause. Everybody pause. Pause. Everybody pause. I'm going to be working on something for a friend that she needs like before the end of March, and I'm just going to, yeah, I'm going to lock in on that so you guys know what I will be doing. We will watch more videos. We're gonna keep watching videos. I'm gonna keep like talking with you guys just so you know what I am up to. I just can't show what I'm drawing because it's NDA. It's NDA. It's like, hey, don't show people this until I publish it. And I'm like, okay. Okay. Yeah. All right, let's continue.
Just like the anime girls that have no facial shading whatsoever. To me, there was some really specific gesture or just facial anatomy placing decisions that I wasn't able to figure out until maybe now. And so this all coalesces into
Theory number one. Anime is painting.
What?
with the focus on complex anatomical
Huge,
accuracy,
it's true.
specific facial feature shapes, appeal, and technique, the anime style shares the same fundamentals of portrait painting that the classical masters use. The
Okay.
most prominent example of this is in the shape of the eyes, including the eyelashes and by extension the eyelids.
Yes.
One of the first observations and methods I use when starting out drawing is not adding lines to indicate the lower eyelid/eyelashes, which is derived from the fact that our lower eyelashes are very thin compared to our upper eyelashes, and that in a regular top-lit setting, the top plane of our lower eyelids are less likely to be darker lit than the bottom plane of our upper eyelids.
Correct.
It's also derived from the shape that the eyelashes and the iris makes in conjunction with each other, because a lot of the time our irises and upper eyelashes are part of the most prominent features of our face, for the reason that they tend to be part of the darkest values of our face. The other
That's
darkest
correct.
values being our mouth and our nostrils.
Hmm?
This segues into one of the most important painting fundamentals, which is values, and how lines count as values. Lines are a fickle thing. They're either used for showing the edge between two things or indicating shadow and texture. Lines are shapes in their own right, and they're usually the darkest value in an anime or cartoon drawing. It's for this reason lines are best used for indicating a property of light when not much shading detail is available for the medium, this property being ambient occlusion.
Yeah.
Some people think of this as line indicating shadow, which is true in quite a few cases, but in relation to the face, I do believe ambient occlusion is the best explanation. If you're unaware of ambient occlusion, it's basically the places on a form where light, including bounce light, is obscured, which means it could be a wrinkle, a fold, a butt crack, your mouth, your nose, and I believe in quite a few cases the place underneath your upper eyelids. These are the components that make up the shape. These shame components, I said shame, are what determine the way facial features are drawn in anime and why they're drawn a certain way. That gap in between the mouth line, that's inadvertently a subtle indication of the way the middle of the upper lip dips down. Rare is it that you'll see the lines on an anime nose actually outline the
so
wings
good.
of the nose the same way a show like Invincible
The
does, but it
butt
doesn't mean
crack.
it never happens. Though in the examples that it does, you can somewhat tell it's more subtle than simply outlining the wings of the nose, which many Western artists are used to. Line thickness is a factor to consider at the same time, as the thicker the line, the bigger the splotch of value you're using. The particular reason why using these values too much can make a face look weird is that a hard value change indicates a hard plane change,
It's actually
which,
good.
if you studied anatomy, you know that there's a bit of a smooth rhythm wrapping around the nose bridge from cheek to cheek, which would lead you to conclude to not add lines to this area for the sake of indicating a smoother plane change, preserving the appeal of the face in the same way a portrait painter would. This isn't always the case for anime, though. Some styles actually do differ from this.
Yeah.
When it comes down to appeal,
Well, what's I
you'd
doing?
want to watch your step.
Great.
Appeal is basically if it looks good. I could get into beauty standards and whatever, but I mean, it just basically is beauty or cuteness or coolness or whatever, it being the forefront of the anime art style. You're drawing the subject's faces in a very appealing manner, and these standards of beauty, well, like, I didn't decide them, but they're kind of what makes faces look nice, in my opinion. I believe it has something to do with anatomy, because I find that beauty can apply to a lot of different things, and no person's face is perfect, so that makes sense. But I see this kind of pattern in the way the facial features are placed that just makes a face look cool. No, by a lot of beauty standards, there's faces that are gruff and stuff, but even I and maybe a lot of you people will think the same thing. A character that's gruff like that can just look really cool and appealing by this certain usage of facial anatomy alone. But appeal, I can't really get into so much because of the vagueness of it all. I'd rather move on to the next topic that's related to what I'm thinking better, which is proportional rhythmic consistency, as I call it. Proportions at the eyes are some of the biggest giveaway to imitation anime artwork. If the eyes are less than one eye width apart, it's most likely a Westerner's take on anime, albeit anime does break this rule with some shows, Mob Psycho 100 being my first thought, but usually when this rule is broken, it's usually just 2/3 of the eye width in between, unless you're watching Doraemon or something, I don't know. But the biggest issue here is that proportions can actually be so wildly varied in anime that there's not really so much defining rules other than it generally stays within the bounds of regular anime proportions to realistic proportions, which is why I shall also bring into the ring another concept that I barely scratched the surface of.
I'm not laughing at the
For a
video.
long
I'm
time,
not laughing at the
I
video.
struggled with placing
I'm
my
fighting
facial features
somebody.
correctly
I'm
even
fighting for
after
my life.
digging.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm fighting for my life. Hey, welcome. I'm fighting for my life. But I will be fine. I will be fine. I need to rewind the video like a couple of minutes. Randy, I added you to the Trello. I also added TP. Currently, I am working on a liner. It's like a very big piece. And I hope that you guys love it because it's very special to me. It's for a friend whose birthday is next month. And she commissioned me for her new starting soon stream. So I'm going to give it all I got to make it like a real anime like screen, like a real screenshot. I'm gonna do my best.
This is perfect, so that makes sense. But I see this kind of pattern in the way the facial features are placed that just makes a face look cool. No, by a lot of beauty standards, there's faces that are gruff and stuff, but even I and maybe a lot of you people will think the same thing. A character that's gruff like that can just look really cool and appealing by this certain usage of facial anatomy alone. But appeal, I can't really get into so much because of the vagueness of it all. I'd rather move on to the next topic that's related to what I'm thinking better, which is proportional rhythmic
Get
consistency, as I call
reference
it.
right now.
Proportions at the eyes are some
Okay,
of the biggest
proportions.
giveaway to imitation anime artwork. If the eyes are less than one eye width apart, it's most likely a Westerner's take on anime, albeit anime does break this rule with some shows, Mob Psycho
Yes.
100 being my first thought, but usually when this rule is broken, it's usually just two-thirds of the eye width in between, unless you're watching Doraemon or something, I don't know. But the biggest issue here is that proportions can actually be so wildly varied in anime that there's not really so much defining
Yeah.
rules other than it generally stays within the bounds of regular anime proportions
Wait,
to
let me
realistic
get-
proportions, which is why I shall also bring into the ring another concept that I've barely scratched the surface of. For a long time, I struggled with placing my facial features correctly even after digging into facial anatomy to the point of studying the freaking facial.
Welcome, Commander. How are you doing? I am coffee. My son is catching something. I don't know what. He's catching something and it's getting to me. And I'm so scared because I don't want to get sick. Because when I get sick, it's bad. It's bad. Okay. Also, I will have you know, I had a semi healthy breakfast, like a very American breakfast, save for bacon and pancakes, which I didn't have, but I had like 3 fried eggs and 3 toast with butter and like a good mug of coffee, and I used like the nice coffee. That coffee was an investment, okay? Like I treated myself and I was like, okay, let's get some exportation high quality Colombian coffee, and I got it, and I only can have it once a week because it's a little treat. And that's it. I ate and I feel satisfied, which is crazy for me because I I tend to eat and I guess I ate and I don't feel satisfied. I feel like it's whatever. But I feel really good after eating. I am doing my intermittent fasting. I will stop my eating window at around 6:30, 6:40 p.m. And yeah, that should be it. Because I used to do my fasting from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. But nah. We're changing things around. Thank you so much. Yeah. Oh my God. I have more news. I have more news. So. This past a couple of days ago, I was like, hey, you guys. I am losing some weight around the waist because my pants are a little loose. No, cause check this out. I am back to size 3XL. I was 4XL, and now like both of my 3XL pants fit me nicely, and that's great for me, and I'm like so happy because when I hit 4XL, it was the moment where I was like, okay, I need to do something here because I can't keep going. I won't be able to, like wear clothing. Where am I going to find clothing? Because I am not against being fat in general. It's more so, what am I going to wear to be in society? But now I'm 3XL. Yay! Ideally, all of you guys know my goal. I'm going to repeat it. I want to be 100 pounds. If it were in my power, I will have no boobs, no ass. I will be a twig. However, I know that it is in some people's interest that I still have an ass, and that I still have some type of boobs. So I'm going to keep the so I'm going to keep the meat. I will still have meat. Maybe a size XL will be good. I just need to lose a couple more sizes, and I will be happy. Yeah. Yeah, I am genetically predisposed to have a big fat ass because I am a black person. It is what it is. But yeah. Yeah, like I am Hispanic and black. I am Afro Latino, so I am bound to have the bearding hips, the 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 maternal body, if you will. I have the good genes, the good genes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's gonna be me. That's gonna be me. Okay, okay, okay. No more, no more debauchery. No more immodest behavior. Immodest behavior. No more immodest behavior. Let's keep watching.
Facial muscles. I can remember most of the
I
basic
need to get a
planes and
refill.
junk,
I've been
but
trying
there's
to
this
get a ref for like 10
inconsistency with
minutes,
the way I was
and
able
just
to draw
keep getting
faces.
distracted.
Until you legit
yeah.
just dropped a video that not only made me question my dive into fundamentals, but has
sorry.
been a major conspiracy board lodged into my Sherlock Holmes mind
Where's my
palace.
friend?
A
Okay, fine.
triangle. A freaking triangle between the corners of the eyes connecting to the tip of the nose. And then all my faces, not even anime faces, became consistent and easy to draw.
Oh, a triangle?
And so we make it to theory 2. Anime faces have
Huh?
gesture. When it
Okay.
comes to gesture, a
What
lot
is
of people are
gesture?
inclined to think of maybe alternating line patterns, irregularity, and asymmetry, but I come to you with another possible explanation,
What you
maybe.
got for?
Flowers have a rhythm to them. Turn on the symmetry
do.
tool and you can make crazy rhythms. The planes of the face have a rhythm, and this is something I figured out long ago.
Okay.
Cynic's design talks about this well, but in shape design, if a shape tapers to a certain point, there's a flow in that direction the shape is tapering to. And guess what tapers downwards almost all the time? Is it so possible that there's a particular rhythm to facial feature placement? Because it's
What?
undeniable that whenever I see a drawing of a face that I really like, there's always some kind of underlying method to it. And so, back to the drawing board I
Huge
went.
if true.
Guess what? Another month passed between the last paragraph and this one. But I found like maybe
God.
3 or 4 things
Where's
that
my
cause this
ref? I just
phenomenon I'm
saved
talking about. The first
Okay,
one
alright.
being that, generally speaking, there's
Oh.
usually this bit of space between the nose bridge and the eyes that is often neglected in many toonish drawings. The second is that there is a kind of rhythm from the inner corners of the eye where it either makes a gesture down to the nose bridge or back around to the cheekbones. The third is technically tied to the second, which is in how the orbicularis oculi muscles flow to create the eyelids, and by
Where's my-
extension,
oh,
this
yeah, I need
rhythm
to
of the
plug my
second
tablet.
part.
Whoops.
The fourth is the acknowledgement of what Michael Hampton refers to as the keystone, which is this trapezoidal shape that connects from the brow line down to the
Oh,
nose bridge.
Yeah.
A Japanese YouTube artist uses this element of facial anatomy in order to draw the
Oh.
face. So altogether, there is some kind of thing going on here, some kind of triangular rhythm, downwards tapering rhythm, despite maybe the face looking more square on some characters.
Yes.
But honestly,
Because
these are
not all
just my
characters
theories
have the
right
same.
now. Hypotheses, technically, but you don't see
Sorry.
evolutionists.
I won't be- oh my god.
These two theories are what I assume to be what
want
makes
trip.
anime
I'm
anime. Because
so-
at this point, if it's not these theories that I came up with or something, the first one I technically didn't, then my last option is to actually get into the field and try this out.
Okay.
And I will do it in these 2 ways. One, I will try to find an imitation anime character's character sheet or something, and then I
Yes.
will try to copy the style of this character until I'm able to draw his or her face from memory. And then
Okay.
maybe I'll compare it to a really similar character from an anime, or I just try to redraw this in my style the same way I
Oof.
usually would, since I
Oof.
honestly think that I've seen so much anime that it's kind of just like second nature. So explaining this or trying to figure out the logic behind it is a pain in the booty. I will tell you though, my mic quality will drop by the experimentation process, mainly because I've been holding this mic up like Friday Nights at Freddy's boyfriend or something. So yeah. So the first character I chose for this study is Marcy from Dota Dragon's Blood, a Studio Mir production, and I decided to compare her with Nobara from Jujutsu Kaisen.
What is he doing? Oh, wrong layer. Typical. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep on drawing. I decided to compare her with the Nobara from Jujutsu Kaisen because both of their faces are longer than the average generic anime art style standards, and also because I thought that maybe their personalities would be similar,
It's
even
okay.
though I've never watched
That's
Dota Dragon's
fancy,
Blood.
unfortunately. I wish
Yeah,
you
I know
could,
that's
but
a
it is
stretch.
what
I
it
honestly
is.
tried to find any parallels whatsoever between the two sides, and this was the best I could come up with in the
Jeez,
end. And I
asymmetry
really
2
didn't want this
for
video to take
my
any much more longer
opinions.
than it already has taken me to make. But anyways, I'd
There
like
we
to
go.
first point out the face I'm
Yeah.
currently drawing and how that face plus the middle top face on the reference image would both not be unprecedented to see in an anime once or twice. And the only difference between the other faces and these particular two are in the way that the facial features were shaped and arranged on the face. The eyes in these other examples do indeed change shape depending on the angle of the face, and they use the hexagonal simplification of the eye in order to support that effect, but despite that, they feel off. They don't feel like a part of the face. Even though the eyes themselves have form, they don't feel like they're conforming to the form of the face. That's a lot of use of the word form. I had to kind of unlearn my intuition of placing the facial features by using a method by Naoki Saito, which you'll see in a second, wherein
Okay, this is
he
where
blocks out the
I
shape of
didn't.
the entire eye, including the eyelashes,
Didn't.
which I'll get to in detail later. This method essentially
Didn't.
helps with gauging the position, size, and shape of the eyes, and it assisted in getting my drawings more on model to the reference. I also think that her eyes were not necessarily drawn with the intent of emphasizing the value shifts of the eye. It feels like they focus on symbolic and graphical quality, yet not so much appeal. And that's quite the assumption from me, but it feels like a much more graphical, toony take rather than a stylized anatomy take on the eye, however you may interpret me saying that, though.
Well,
And
I'll
so,
get it.
being
Well,
comfortable with the way I drew Marcy, I decided to move on to Nobara, and I immediately felt the difference. Her face felt gestural to draw, it felt natural. It felt like lines flowed from one part to another without issue, and using my intuition didn't stunt me on being on model, but rather helped in
I
this
have
case.
one. I have one comment about this, and it's like I get the guy. I get the guy. He has studied art, so he gets it. Like he knows what he's talking about. But I am a little miffed about the way he speaks about anime because he just say so I switched it to the anime character and it was a huge change and everything felt natural and it felt intuitive and I don't know, it's like, did it really feel intuitive or do you have a bias with anime art? Because he might as well be saying the truth, but I just really need to know, do you have like an intrinsic bias towards art that is Japanese? I don't know, I can be wrong, I can be wrong. Because in another part of the video when he's talking about the distance between the eyes, he's like, I should always have one eye, like the space has to be a whole eye of space and it should never be less than that. uh but some anime do it sometimes, and a lot of anime do it, so it's hard to say. It's like he has contradicted himself. I think he has great points, but I am noticing some contradictions in some bias towards anime. I personally do not like American Western stylized imitation anime. I do not like it. It's just that I agree with him. I I need to point out what something doesn't make sense to me. To me.
Face. And whenever I had a mishap on the eye shapes, I would be able to fix it using one of my rhythms from Theory 2. And here I'm checking the eye shapes using the same method as before, and it's here that I realize that not only are the eyes placed according to the shape of the face, but they're also shaped in correspondence to the shape of the face as well. And I think this is the most crucial point. I think that the structure and gesture has to go hand in hand, and this is evident by the overlap of the nose bridge and the brow in many of
I
the
think that's true.
her face angle reference photos.
I
It's
think that's true.
really unconformity of the facial features with the face itself, and I think this is what makes the anime style work so much. You can't have one or the other. If it's only structural, it'll be too stiff and it won't really be appealing. But with gesture, it does still look appealing, albeit I wasn't really able to get Nobara on model after I stopped giving myself the luxury of having a reference on hand at all times. And
Me,
I
yes.
think that still needs work because even
Oh, I
at
need to do
the end of the
something. Am I
Nobara
going
study
to
where
make
I
it on
left off
time?
telling
Yes.
myself it's good enough, I still had issues with it personally. I don't think I drew her on model whatsoever. When I said JJK was an art inspiration to me, I just meant that I generally pick up on visual information through the anime I watch, not that I have such interest in JJK that I'd go out of my way to study its style, but here we are out of necessity and dedication, I guess. A fun fact I learned is that animals have a much more apparent example of rhythm number two, from the inner corners of the eye down to the nose. I suspect it's their longer maxilla that their eyes have a much more pronounced inner corner, which kind of suggests the rhythms originate from skull anatomy in the first place in the way skin stretches around that, but I didn't want to have to get into explaining such a complex shape as a skull, since this video is also tackling the issue of subtlety in very tactful value placement. And right here, I'm going back and forth with Nobara and Marcy as I get ready to do a redesign.
hello, for your misfortune, for your collective misfortune, I am back. Yes, that's right. I am back. Oh, the
Sign for
misery.
Marcy's face. And
Oh, the misery.
I don't have much to say yet because we're not at the part, but yeah, I think I was
Ain't
talking
nobody
about
here.
a lot. Yeah, at this point in the recording, I begin to work on the Marcy face redesign. I pull out a more refined reference sheet and begin trying to copy the faces on it before giving it my own twist. And I notice that her face is way too flat from the profile view. I get that it's trying to be more realistic, but faces are not that flat on the muzzle area on real people. And I start applying the value shapes to the eyes in the form of the eyelashes and the pupils, still trying to keep the same shape and rhythm proportions, but just drawing the features with the rhythm, structures, and values in mind. And I genuinely think that this leads to something that looks more anime. I don't know if it looks more Marcy. I try to keep her character's feeling as much as I can. But maybe I'm also just like stuck up for like making a video about this.
You really are.
Does it
You
even look
really
more
are.
anime? I don't even know. I don't even know if I think I'm better than I actually am. I probably do, honestly. Like even subconsciously. Um dude, this video
Guys, he's
sucks.
so close to getting it. He's so close. Oh my god. He is so close
What have we
to being
learned?
self-aware.
Oh god. Theory 1 is true. The anime style is based upon painting fundamentals. Facial anatomy is acknowledged. Accuracy and precision are anything but underlooked, and subtlety and shapes of value are highly regarded. Theory 2 is also true. Facial features are always placed and shaped in a rhythmic way, but not only that, and I think this is the key ingredient. These rhythms and gestures are decided by the face's structure. The facial features must conform to the face in some kind of way. It must flow with the anatomy and look like it belongs there in such ways as acknowledging the eye sockets and the way the brow or nose bridge may overlap with the eyes.
He's
I'm
overthinking
making this
it.
text P gold because I genuinely think this is one of the
He's
most important things I've learned from doing this study.
I don't
Just to
think
add to
it's
that, one notable thing I attempted to do in my Marcy face
I
redesign is
don't
keeping her
think it's
facial proportions
that
vertically because I am of the belief that the proportions of the
guys.
face shouldn't matter as much as the rhythms or anatomy in
I think
making
he's
something
taking
look
it a
more
little
anime.
too
This isn't
seriously.
just proved by my empirical knowledge of having drawn the characters, but also the various speed paints of anime industry professionals that are available online. For example, Studio Trigger has some speed paints you could search for and watch right now. And in regards to that, here are some 2 tips that I have learned from making this entire gosh forsaken video over the span of like 8 freaking months or something.
Okay.
Mark the sclera's edges. The white of the eye, or the sclera, should be
Sclera.
acknowledged while drawing the eyes. This should be a given, but I've made a bad habit out of drawing only the upper eyelashes without consideration of the boundaries of the eye, and it's made some of my drawings turn out like crap when I fully rendered them. I think out of
Don't
anything,
say
if the
that.
eye looks strange
don't
while
look
fully
like crap.
outlined, you're most likely doing something wrong. Also, consider the direction the eyelashes protrude. I always thought it was weird when some artists included the eyelashes as part of the overall shape of the eye, until I considered the fact that
Anime does
eyelashes
it.
usually protrude downward. Unless eyelashes were styled like those scary people from YouTube Rewind 2018.
Anime does it.
Essentially, keep in mind how your eyelashes protrude from your eyelids. I know that depends a lot, but I often find that filling my eyelash shapes outside the bounds of the eye causes an imitation anime effect. But that's not a rule, and after more time and consideration, it's possible that it's rather because I was drawing the edge of the sclera while focusing on the edge of the eyelashes instead. But it's not as if imitation anime doesn't adhere to these theories either. Imitation anime is made by industry professionals. They are first required to have solid drawing skills, gesture drawing skills, and anatomical knowledge. The biggest
Yes.
possible disconnects must then be the misconception of what anime actually looks like, the misinterpretation of the elements of it through a generalized lens, hence the assumption that anime is simplified, or just simply the inaccuracy to the anime style. As I found, though, the biggest two simply put reasons, the anime manga style isn't observed carefully enough, and a vast majority of Western anime art tutorials are made by people that are kind of unqualified for the task of teaching it. Not to discredit their work completely, of course. I think everyone has valuable information unique to
I
their own
think
mental
he's
database,
telling
but
on
for
himself.
the case of drawing anime, a very specific skill set and visual library is required, and I believe that the instructor's work must heavily reflect the promised product. If you were to constantly hammer in the visual library of anime or manga faces by observation, you would have small issue in developing a style that mirrors that of Japanese artists, especially if you're familiar with the art fundamentals already. And as long as you pick your sources carefully, you shouldn't have to worry much about methodology. But of course, if you want to draw like a Japanese artist, it'd be in your best interest to learn from a Japanese artist, would it not? And as for some recommendations, I recommend Naoki Saito and Hide channel. I'm pretty sure a good portion of their videos have English subtitles. I'd actually probably prefer if you learned from them more than me because I am not a professional.
You really
I don't know
aren't.
if you've seen that
You
in my line work. I've
really
only
aren't.
just started to fix that.
You
But
really
up to you.
aren't.
Just be really careful with who you learn from. It's not impossible to draw in the anime art style if you weren't born in Japan. Foreigners have already broken into the anime industry, and the contributions they have made to it are usually the most unique and beloved in the Sakuga community. My favorite animator, Bahi JD, isn't even from Japan, he's from Austria. And as for the notable Western anime studios that have better reputation, like Powerhouse Animation and The Line, for one, I think that Castlevania does understand some things about anime faces, and I honestly like their face drawings more than most of the other series by the studios I've mentioned on here. But the differences between the styles are much more present in their other works, and I think the same about The Line, but they both are getting there, especially The Line in terms of their recent work. Shoving this into here while I still can, Titmouse Incorporated, the animation studio that made The Legend of Vox Machina, Pantheon, and Scavenger's Reign, which is the only thing from them that I've watched, actually have a style of imitation anime similar to that of Studio Mir's capability, albeit they do have an example that I'd say is slightly more faithful to anime than Studio Mir's default style, but looks a bit amateurish in quality. Despite that, Titmouse's art style versatility is actually quite impressive in tandem with the line's art style variety. I think that the best execution of the anime art style by one of these non-Japan studios is still the Star Wars Visions 2 episode by Studio Mir, however. Note that I probably could have gotten into Dongwa, but my business lies with the westernized art style unique to studios like Studio Mir. I think Studio Mir is the biggest outlier when it comes to this art style's presence, especially considering they're literally right next to Japan, and you rarely see Dongwa struggling to replicate anime, but rather exceeding anime in terms of quality. For the record, I don't even hate Western animation or art styles as a whole. One recent animation I watched and broke down crying for no good reason at the end is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. It uses the same artistic principles that anime is drawn with on their characters, and it only serves to make them endearing, not in a toonish way, but rather in a painterly way. I love the art styles of that one era of older movies. You know, the era where you had stuff like Treasure Planet and El Dorado. Am I bunching the two wrong things together? Look, what I'm getting at here is that really feel like the painterly and gestural aspects of anime faces aren't understood in the Western animation industry anymore. But at the same time, these artists are by all means more experienced and more professionally trained and verified than I am, and there is no reason that they wouldn't be able to grasp an alternative art philosophy, considering they have the same roots and fundamentals. And in terms of experimental animation in the West, I would look to Love, Death, and Robots, but I never really watched it. Mainly because I didn't want to get past the love part, but I'm a big man now. I can handle that crap, but also I just don't feel motivated to watch it. So, in place of my lack of information, do indeed correct me about anything in the comments. I am not a trusted source. This is my first video, so listen to me with discernment. I'm not trying to tell people to draw anime or manga perfect.
But you
I don't
are.
draw anime
You literally
perfectly.
are. Oh my god,
We are
you literally
imperfect beings
are.
by nature, and the
That's
only outlier is literally
you
Jesus
are.
Christ. I made this
But that's
video
the
because
point.
I wanted to try to figure out why I could tell that imitation anime looked like imitation anime in the
You're
first
literally
place.
telling people
Because
you have
I
to do
wanted to
things like
avoid it in
this.
my style personally. And I accept that sometimes what is someone else's choice of style isn't necessarily my preference, and that's okay. I can still appreciate the artistic skill and work that went into it, but there sometimes does tend to be a personal barrier for me when it comes to the style itself, where I can't shake off this feeling of disconnect from myself in the characters of the story.
I think that's a him
Maybe I'm
problem.
just a freaking weeaboo.
You are.
But
You
it's really
literally
much more
are.
simple if you think about it. If you want to draw like a
literally
Japanese
are.
artist, look at Japanese art. Observe Japanese art. The artistic standards and philosophies overseas are much more different than the ones at home. But honestly, the skill required to draw anime or manga is not effortlessly attainable. It usually takes precision, care, and butt tons of trial and error. But once you have a goal in focus, and the standard you wish to reach becomes more defined and informed, you must stay persistent because not everyone is going to be able to draw something like Kazuya Takahashi on their first week of trying to. But if at the end of that week, your art has significantly improved and moved in the direction of your goal since the start, that's what matters the most. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was this big fat butt. Nicki Minaj, Art of War.
Nah, he's contradicting himself a lot. I'm gonna comment. I need to comment. Hmm. No, I don't think he's going to read my comment. I don't think my comment matters, so I won't leave it there. Because what's the point of leaving a comment, honestly, if nobody is going to give a shit? What? Yes, it is. What is this? What is this? What is is this? Let's watch this. Surely nothing
Fire
bad's
Emblem
gonna happen,
Fates
you know?
permanently split a Nintendo fan base, literally, and in more ways than having players choose between its three versions:
Surely
Birthright, Conquest,
nothing
and
bad's
Revelation.
gonna happen.
Didn't expect that, did you?
Being one of Nintendo's most enduring franchises, nearly as long-running as The Legend of Zelda or Metroid, Fire Emblem 2 has a storied history of experimentation across its many entries. At its core, though, it's always been a tactical RPG series known for its daunting permadeath feature, where your soldiers are individuals that won't come back if they die, making every decision on the battlefield matter, as one wrong move could lead to losing them forever. Fire Emblem developer Intelligent Systems has also increasingly focused on player choice over the years, something they'd toyed with all the way back in the very first Fire Emblem. But this time around, for the 14th entry in the series, they went a bit further than just having the player decide between two different opposing characters. They'd chosen to make the core concept of a whole game entirely based upon player choice. This decision led to Fire Emblem Fates' multiple versions, very much akin to the Pokemon series. But what followed with Fates' reception was a divide between fans and players so great, and backlash so public, that the developers seemed to not have fully anticipated at the time, the ramifications of which we're still experiencing today. Since the release of Awakening, the 13th entry and first 3DS Fire Emblem game, series veterans began to feel a growing unease in the new direction that Fire Emblem was embarking upon. Awakening was nearly the last entry in a dying series that somehow managed to turn everything around. Among its various experimentations with the series formula was its decision to appeal to a more general audience, with a slight change in tone, more simplified gameplay, a casual mode, more overtly sexualized female characters, and a newfound focus on romance between the player and their soldiers. All of a sudden, their beloved series was getting dumbed down. Fire Emblem was becoming a dating simulator. But for some, it would be their first introduction to the series, and they would go on to love Fire Emblem in their own way, with these newer games as their main points of reference. In disdain, elitists even dubbed those in this camp Fate's Awakening babies. They felt they had no concept of the purity and uncorrupted excellence of the games that came before. The following game, aiming to continue Awakening's success and newly revitalized mainstream interest, took its newfound spirit in stride, doubling down on this new direction in all the right or wrong ways. This, plus the numerous explosive public controversies that would go on to surround it, would permanently split an already splintering fanbase, further embroiling the fledgling community into complicated discussions surrounding fan service, morality, and lesbians, cementing it as the most divisive Fire Emblem of all time. These are the many controversies of Fire Emblem Fates.
We're not bad people, but we did a bad thing.
Chapter 1. Petting.
Whoa!
Perhaps the most infamous controversy of Fire Emblem Fates, the petting scandal. In early 2016, ahead of the game's release outside of Japan, Nintendo confirmed it would be removing a feature from the Japanese version of the game that was known as skinship. In Japan, skinship refers to displays of affection, like hugs, holding hands, or soft caresses of the cheek. In Fates, the player can invite guests to the private quarters area of their castle. This results in a live 2D animated image of them appearing on screen, followed by some spoken dialogue and hearts, which increases support with that character. But in the original Japanese version, the intention was for the player to pet or physically touch these characters in minigame fashion in order to attain this boost. Regardless of character gender, orientation, or age, the player would be petting everyone's faces in between their other castle duties. That's certainly one way to get to know someone. The feature itself wasn't sexually explicit, just a little odd, perhaps, to those from other cultures. And so, concerned about the strange implications of this feature for Western audiences, Nintendo's localizers opted to remove the petting aspect and instead have the player receive the reward boost without having to physically interact with the character at all. This resulted in the rather short and oddly stilted scenes in the final game, where characters appear, utter a line, and then promptly leave the room. In actuality, though, during development, developer Intelligent Systems had originally incorporated full-body petting capabilities, and the stylus cursor the player used for such was originally a hand. After review, Nintendo asked them to tone down these aspects of the feature, so what released in Japan was already a tamer version than what was originally conceived. After looking more closely into some of the dialogue that made it to store shelves in the Japanese original, it's not surprising to me that changes had been requested, because if this is dialogue that actually made it to launch, I can only imagine what could have been there before. Due to the news of these intended changes spreading, though, many Western players expressed concern and outrage over what they felt was censorship of this feature, as they wanted to experience it as originally intended, despite the cultural differences and potential strangeness. Some questioned if the private quarters location might even end up completely gutted due to the impending alterations. To their dismay, things were indeed changed regardless of their backlash. However, looking back, I do personally think that the localizers handled this matter in the most tasteful way possible, with the area retaining most of its original mechanics, just not the petting minigame part. The silver lining, though, is that they did opt to keep some of the petting gameplay in regards to interacting with your spouse. Once you've married someone from your roster of characters, you can still experience this feature in a few ways, like using your stylus to softly touch their face and wake them up, or blow air at them using the 3DS's microphone. So, if anything, what we ended up getting was a happy medium and not a complete gutting. But I certainly can't deny the mysterious intrigue that now surrounds the feature in the Japanese version. As far as other changes go, the international release also removed the interactable camera feature while using the hot springs. In the Japanese original, the player was able to look around more closely in the room and at the characters present. Having been altered, this, unfortunately, makes it so that a lot of the room environment of the hot springs now goes unseen in our version, and further hollows out its intended purpose. Bathing suit accessories for the hot springs were also removed, making the final accessory tab only feature standard bathing towels, whereas originally there were a variety of bathing suits available for characters to wear. Unlike the petting alterations, both of these changes seem rather excessive to me, considering we're constantly exposed to people wearing bathing suits in media and at places like the beach. But I suppose if you consider the possibilities of applying bathing suits to, and zooming in on, certain questionable characters like Elise, perhaps that's what led to these removals.
I didn't know I was going to do this, I just figured it might be interesting.
That's weird. That's weird.
Chapter 2. 3 versions, 3 stories.
Yeah, I need to work. I need to work hard for you. I need to work hard for you.
Please note, there will be some slight story spoilers in this section. Much as the Pokemon series has over the years, Fates experimented with multiple versions for the first time in the series, resulting in 3 separate routes: Birthright, Conquest, and a digital-only Revelation. Upon buying a physical copy of either Birthright or Conquest in stores for $40, the player could then purchase the additional 2 other routes for a discounted $20 each. This resulted in players needing to spend $80 to get the entire picture of the overall story and game experience. The $80 price tag also did not include any further downloadable content, which was, of course, also available at additional costs. Many fans were not happy about this particular scheme, which added insult to injury as each individual game felt incomplete without the additional context gained by its other pieces. Certain story aspects were left unexplained in one route and could only be answered by purchasing and playing another. For example, Nor's conquest of Hoshidan territory isn't at all explained when the player sides with Nor in the Conquest version of the game, where you'd think it would be a central focus. Instead, it's explained in the Birthright route that the reason for its invasion is out of a desperate campaign to acquire more resources and feed its starving populace. Even worse is that the story of Fates overall wasn't very well received, creating even less perceived value to this $80 behemoth outside of its gameplay, the quality of which also varied with each route. Whereas the story was ripe to focus on interesting quandaries and moral dilemmas, especially as Corrin would betray one set of siblings for another right at the start, it opted to, instead, cheaply focus on forced contrivances, wacky plot twists, and nonsensical decision-making made by the characters. Also, unlike Awakening's Robin, Fates' protagonist Corrin often left the player feeling out of sync, disagreeing with the character that they were supposed to be experiencing this world through. The conquest route, in particular, is perhaps the biggest offender here, where Corrin, intending to change the conflict-hungry Nor from within and find a way to achieve peace while fighting with the bad guys, is impotently forced into obeying their obviously evil father and doing his bidding. This results in ridiculous plot developments where the writers create any silly excuse possible to allow good guy Corrin to tiptoe around their father's gruesome demands while still somehow satisfying them. Birthright treats the war like a family road trip, which sees the siblings strangely splitting up with no explanation, with some going missing, completely failing to give arcs to or develop most of them, leaving its overall plot feeling aimless. Corrin seems to have even less of a familial connection to the siblings that are supposed to be their blood-related ones, but actually aren't in a strange twist that I'll get to later. And characters like Hinoka are barely present in their own storyline, where random NPC characters like Zola end up getting more of the spotlight instead. Revelation didn't fare much better either, unsatisfactorily revealing that the illusory purple assailants plaguing the player and the other paths had actually been behind all of the story's major events the entire time, thus leading to the other two routes feeling even more pointless and forced. I think the best way to illustrate the general apathy toward Fates' storylines is to highlight the game's trailer, opening, and animated cutscenes, which did such a good job of giving weight to the plot and creating a serious degree of intrigue with the characters and story that, unfortunately, the actual silly plot and slapstick twists could never truly live up to, resulting in a strange disconnect between the perception of this world and the actual in-game reality of it. Shin Kibayashi, a manga story writer, was brought in to create the story treatment for Fates' Three Paths, following feedback from fans that Awakening's story was rather lackluster and predictable. Intelligent Systems wanted to fix this problem with Fates, but instead, they unfortunately ended up perpetuating it. Kibayashi went above and beyond in his duties, writing an excessive 500-page treatment covering just the Hoshiden characters and story, way more than Intelligent Systems had expected, as they had merely requested of him 10 pages for each of the paths. After somewhat accidentally reaching 500 pages the first time around, he doubted he'd be able to provide the same amount for the other two, but eventually he did. He later stated that his final contribution could have been made into 2 books, and totaled over 1,500 pages. However, despite his extreme dedication and the wealth of material he provided, his contribution was merely intended as a draft, and when it came to implementing his work, it was, of course, severely cut down and altered by other team members, resulting in what we see in the final game. The staff credits list Nami Kimuro as the writer in charge of the main scenario for the Birthright and Conquest paths, and we later learned that Senran Kagura writer Yukinori Kitajima worked on the Revelation storyline, as well as there being several other staff members who contributed to the game's scenario writing. Perhaps this was a case of too many cooks in the kitchen, and that would certainly explain the extreme differences in characterization across the story paths, as well as the uneven tone and tropey contrivances that the plot relies on. We also know that a lot was changed throughout the development process, like characters having their entire personalities altered from what was originally intended, with Camilla and Sakura mentioned specifically in interviews. There were also entirely new characters added and cut from the story, with the character Hinoka, for example, being an inclusion that was not a part of the original story draft. In retrospect, this explains her distinct lack of presence in the game, even though she is supposed to be a royal sibling. It's honestly disappointing that we may never know where Kibayashi's original treatment took the story, but at the very least, it's easy to see why the final result was messy, poorly received, and contributed to the overall heated controversy and malaise surrounding the game. There was also considerable controversy surrounding the special edition version of Fates. Fire Emblem has featured many special editions of its releases over the years, typically featuring extra goodies like art books, music CDs, steelbooks, pins, and so on. But the Fire Emblem Fates special edition brought something else to the table. It featured a game cartridge with all 3 versions of the game natively on the cartridge, as well as 9 save files instead of the standard 3. This meant that you wouldn't have to pay for or download the other versions into your 3DS's memory. This created an inherently superior version of the game cartridge and way to own Fates, taking up less internal 3DS memory and having plenty of slots for playthroughs across the 3 routes of the game. But like many of Nintendo's limited edition releases, there was a potentially artificial scarcity to these special editions. During its initial announcement, pre-orders online through sites like Best Buy and game stores like GameStop sold out quickly, leaving many unable to secure their copy. Scalpers took full advantage of these pre-orders, snatching up as many copies as possible and relisted them for hundreds of dollars overpriced on sites like eBay. I remember this tumultuous period as I personally spent countless hours across many lunch breaks at work, calling around to every GameStop in my state to see if they somehow, miraculously, had any extra copies that hadn't been picked up, but to no avail. No one had it, though most were aware of the situation and how sought after these copies were, but there was nothing that they could do. Eventually, I succumbed to buying it from a scalper for $100 more than its original $80 price tag. Shameful, I know. However, much later, a GameStop employee that I'd spoken to did eventually call me back, letting me know that they did end up with an extra that hadn't been picked up. She actually remembered me a month after I called, which was incredible. So I raced to the store and picked it up, later giving this copy to a close friend who had really wanted one. I'll never forget that, and I was incredibly grateful for such an effort, even though I'd already bit the bullet elsewhere. I don't think that employee still works for GameStop today, but still, wherever you are, thank you so much to Laura from the Meriden Mall GameStop store. It was an amazing act of kindness and an exceptional way to treat a customer. Chapter 3. Incest.
Goodness gracious.
Oh, okay.
You're so cool and powerful and epic and sexy and hot, and please just kiss me. I really want a kiss from you. Please, big brother, please. In Fire Emblem Fates, across the 3 games, the player is able to marry anyone that they want to from their main roster of characters, outside of amiibo characters, recruitable bosses, and bond units. This includes characters from their non-blood related Nori and step-siblings that they grew up with, as well as their supposedly blood-related Hoshidan siblings, who they were separated from during childhood. As you can probably tell, this creates a rather inappropriate dynamic where the game seems to promote incest, another potential powder keg of controversy. While there are many characters you can marry that don't fall into either of these 2 questionable categories, Flora fans rejoice, many of the characters central to the story and who take up the most screen time, and thus player investment, will. As societally embarrassing as it may be to end up marrying someone you're not related to, but that you grew up with as a sibling, unless of course you fancy visiting the homepages of many adult content,
What?
supposedly blood-related Hoshidans take the cake here for the most unhinged inclusion. Without a drip of hesitation, the game allows you to marry them, which by definition would be incest. However, to curb the resulting issues that such an inclusion would create, the game then bends over backwards to comply with the player's wishes, and rather ham-fistedly injects reasoning for why this choice would actually be okay. You see, when marrying a Hoshidan sibling, the character will have received a letter from Mikoto, their mother figure, telling them that she foresaw the future and that they would end up with Korin, so she wrote them the letter to confirm that Korin was her only biological child, hand-waving the incest concerns and thus granting them her blessing to be together. This, of course, results in the very odd revelation that the Hoshidan siblings and Korin aren't actually blood-related, in what seems like the ultimate butt pull for a version of the game where these characters' story relevance was that they were actually your real siblings. Even worse is that older sibling Ryoma apparently knew about this all along, but never mentioned it to the player. Maybe he was still quite upset about you trying to marry Sakura and acting passive-aggressively. Azura is a bit of a weird one too, since she and Korin are technically first cousins. Korin's biological parents are Mikoto and Anankos, whereas Azura's mother is Arate and her father is unknown, perhaps some king of Vala. Mikoto and Arate are sisters, thus making Korin and Azura cousins, creating another slightly awkward scenario, this time even with Korin's actual bloodline.
We're a real family now. And I
Don't.
love my family more than
Don't
anything.
say that! Don't say that!
Chapter 4.
Don't say that.
Children.
Evil be gone!
It's the half
A fairly
price
popular
again.
mechanic first introduced in the 4th entry, Genealogy of the Holy War, child units were once again featured in Fates after their triumphant return and resulting popularity in its predecessor, Fire Emblem Awakening. However, this time around, their implementation and inclusion in the story in general left players scratching their heads. In Fates, as soon as two characters achieve an S-rank support level and get married, they immediately bear a child, as one would, I guess, resulting in that child's recruitment mission being available to the player. I know people like to joke about child soldiers in Fire Emblem games, but this one took it as far as it's ever gone. Upon beating the chapter, this mysteriously aged young soldier would then join your ranks like any other. This is explained in-game by the child being raised in the Deep Realms, a nebulous area outside of the typical game world where time flows at a faster rate, resulting in your newly wedded couple being introduced to their now supposedly teenager-aged offspring. This takes place after just a handful of off-screen visits by the parents. So not only does the child go from birth to young adult in an instant, it also further implies a degree of neglect from the parent characters, having only visited their child occasionally behind the scenes.
Yeah, like that's
While no official ages were given to the cast of Fire Emblem Fates, which I'm sure was on purpose, there is certainly a visual variety to the ages of its characters. This leaves some looking rather inappropriately young to be married off and start birthing children. Many have often pointed out the character Elise's questionable age in particular, finding localized dialogue attempting to explain that she is indeed of age rather humorous, as it doesn't seem to fit with the rest of her characterization at all. Nintendo's Treehouse localization division was clearly concerned about the player's ability to marry Elise, and thus wanted to ensure that while she looks and acts like a child, she is, quote-unquote, technically an adult. The character Nyx is another example of this. Nyx was once an evil adult sorcerer, but due to a curse, is now trapped in the body of a young girl, technically of age, but physically very questionable. She is now also a young girl that is one of the few potential female mothers of the child units, thus requiring the player to pair her up if they hope to get all of them. The children characters can also achieve S-rank supports with each other and with Corrin, though thankfully these were handled mostly with a degree of care, since the idea of these younger characters vowing to marry in much the same way as their adult parents did would be quite strange. So, most end without a mention of marriage and simply concern the characters being together. The S-ranks with Corrin, however, are romantic in nature and do result in marriage, thus also leading to some rather unfortunate scenarios where Corrin can marry the newborn, yet time-altered teenage offspring of their friends and allies. Cute.
Yucky.
But one child character, in particular, provided the community with even more unexpected controversy.
Oh, the lesbian.
Chapter 5. Soleil's Gay Conversion.
Oh, my goodness.
Fire Emblem.
Back before the days of worldwide releases, Fire Emblem Fates launched in Japan in late June 2015, and wouldn't make it to the West until February of the following year. This left eager fans outside of Japan 8 whole months to speculate and salivate over every piece of information that they could get their hands on. Following the Japanese launch, fans feverishly translated and shared many different aspects of the game, like support conversations, with the rest of the eager Western audience, in order to provide them with further insights before it reached their store shelves. After coming across this information in early 2016, a Twitter user by the name of Ashley made a tweet that was intended to be sarcastic about a particular support conversation they'd read involving the character Soleil. In it, they joked about Fates' apparent lack of progressivism, stating that there was actually a cure the lesbian scene in the game. Online discourse being what it is, lacking any nuance and verbal inflection, led to the tweet being shared and retweeted heavily by many fans who probably didn't even realize it wasn't meant to be taken as a serious critique. Because of it blowing up and making its way around the community though, it wasn't long before it began to be picked up by various news sites, who then proceeded to blast the game for featuring such insensitive and questionable material. This applied considerable pressure to Nintendo to address the situation, going as far as stating to Nintendo World Report, in the version of the game that ships in the US and Europe, there is no expression which might be considered as gay conversion or drugging that occurs between characters. But what exactly took place in this scene for it to have been so incorrectly interpreted in this manner? Well, in the original version of this conversation, male Corrin attempts to help Soleil overcome her challenges with shyness and fainting when trying to interact with other women that she finds attractive. As part of his solution to help Soleil, Corrin drugs her with a magical concoction that causes her to see women as men and men as women, allowing for her to more easily interact with those she couldn't previously. It's made pretty clear that Corrin's intention isn't to make Soleil straight with this little stunt, but instead to help address her shyness as she views it as a weakness. It's also revealed soon after that this stunt doesn't actually work. Soleil's trouble dealing with cute girls remains. Strangely though, this does unintentionally result in Soleil being attracted to Corrin after seeing him as a girl, and does ultimately lead to a romantic heterosexual coupling between the two, which some felt was slightly odd considering her apparent interest added but pairings, which might to some indicate that she is in fact not a lesbian, already with relation though. Let's examine, and thus it's a bit of a truly intended
Stay with me forever.
of fates. Soleil exists in a sort of awkward place as a character who definitely appears more interested in women, but who can only develop romantic relationships with male characters. This was likely intended as part of a Japanese trope. However, this was changed in the localized version. In the West, Soleil's supports with the other male offspring are largely platonic, with the relationships typically ending where Soleil and her partner are just really good friends, and any romantic interest on behalf of the partner is swiftly shut down. Again, this could have been done due to the questionable nature surrounding the ages of the child. Soleil wants to very effeminate features, romantic concerns would have had scope that sexual sensation Camilla.
Oh my god, Camilla.
Sorry, darling.
Oh my god, Camilla.
Since Fates' introduction to the series, the Norian princess Camilla has been a fan favorite character for numerous very big reasons. But more than ever before, the developers at Intelligent Systems decided to take things further with her cutscenes and characterization. Whereas many Fire Emblem games, especially in the modern era, feature appealing, well-endowed female characters, Camilla has the distinct honor of appearing front and center in some of the most sexualized cutscenes the series has ever seen. In what was a series first, this character's Chapter 13 reintroduction in the Birthright route features her entering the screen as the camera pans around her hindquarters, her bikini area, then a rather gratuitous pass of her breasts, and ends with her playfully pouting and approaching with a hug. Sprinkle in some dialogue about Corrin missing their big sister, and you've got a perfectly blended cocktail of awkwardness, for most people anyway. It's as if the game is screaming as loud as it can for the player to look at how hot their big stepsister is. And if they didn't know what all of her assets looked like before, well, they certainly would now. This footage might feel more at home in a not-safe-for-work hentai game than your typical strategy RPG, and once more left many scratching their heads over such an inclusion. Her nonsensical outfit, halfway between a gowned nun and a Valkyrie in armored lingerie, seemingly crafted solely for this purpose. Even more bizarrely, another cutscene from later on in the game features the protagonist Corrin accidentally running into and bouncing off of Camilla's breasts. All this, mind you, for a character that is in essence your stepsister. While there is no blood relation between Corrin and their Norian siblings like Camilla, they have grown up experiencing Camilla playing the doting older sister role, which certainly raises eyebrows as to her hypersexualized focus throughout the story. It's really a miracle that technology in the world of Fates hadn't caught up to the modern day, lest we'd have ended up with a cutscene of her stuck in a washing machine.
Oh, goodness. I'm glad you stopped by.
Though Camilla's appearance and personality are indeed rather exaggerated, she and the other Norian siblings, save for Xander, are actually a product of King Garen's philandering with his concubines. Before the events of Fates, a conflict took place known as the Concubine Wars, a power struggle where Garen's many lovers attempted to vie for power by taking the late Queen Ekaterina's place by his side. If we take that into account when considering Camilla's personality, it's possible that she was intended to be more deeply affected than Leo and Elise by these events. Perhaps her mother used her own sexuality and Camilla, as her daughter with Garen, as tools to achieve her aims, and may have even passed away during such events due to her distinct absence and lack of mention in the story. Trauma from such events could explain why Camilla often confuses love and violence, and could perhaps lend to her slightly twisted view of motherly love. But for some, that might just still be a backdated excuse for the developer's decision to pander. Despite the rather overt framing of her character and its negative reception, Camilla has remained a fan favorite in the years since. But it is unfortunate that she was given so much extra attention in this way, as she probably would have been even better received had they focused a little less on making her a tool for gratuitous fan service. Intelligent Systems seem to have learned their lessons from Camilla, though, as future entries have severely toned down this extreme level of attention with the well-endowed waifu characters. Chapter 7. Rush Development.
Facts again?
As a project featuring 3 separate storylines, and Fates being the first time Intelligent Systems attempted such a grand feat, it's no surprise that there were obvious shortcomings and blemishes on the final product. In addition to this, it's believed that the game may have been rushed in order to be released in time for Fire Emblem's 25th anniversary in 2015. Though this is mostly speculation, as we'll never know the full story of development. However, there are many signs and leftovers in the game's code that point to this being the case. Many features intended to be included were ultimately cut from the game, alongside numerous skills and items that go unused, various character changes, story rewrites as previously mentioned, and careless mistakes like several weapons with incorrect models in the final release. The lack of availability, yet retained forgeability of a few of the game's rarer weapons may have also indicated that at some point, developers wanted to create a constantly rotating marketplace for the shops in My Castle, where these items would have been more easily accessible. Characters like Nickel and Candace were likely originally designed to be fully playable characters and not just capturable bosses. Their names appear near the start of the character list, alongside other avatar-only supporting characters. They also have critical cut-ins, something that other capturable bosses lack. 6 weapons in the game, specifically the Bamboo Yumi, Caltrop, Harp Yumi, Rinka's Club, Sidelong Yumi, and Robin's Primer, appear with the default bronze or brass weapon models instead of the actually intended models that were fully developed and included in the game's assets. When it comes to the localized version, there's even unused petting dialogue actually recorded by the English voice actors, indicating to some degree that petting might have not been on the chopping block from the very beginning.
Oh, stop! I'm ticklish.
You are a weird one.
Hello, Chia. I'm gonna get a monster. I have been drinking Monster for a week. I can't live without it. I lived without it until now. It's just like, oh, what a monster. I'm gonna get my monster. Be right back. Woo, woo. Thank you so much, Chia. I hope that you're having a good day too. I hope that your Friday is nice. I hope that your Friday is calm and that you enjoy your evening later. Did you eat? Did you eat breakfast? Are you gonna get lunch soon? Be right back. Oh, you just woke up, baby? Okay. Get something good to eat to start your day and drink some water too. Be right back. Good. You eat after your bath. You have a good bath. You get comfy. My back is hurting. Again. I want a massage. You know what I feel in my back? It feels bumpy. And I don't like that. Like, I don't want to say, oh, I have like tiny little bumps. No, it feels like one side of my back feels swollen. And I don't like that. And I don't think that's normal. You guys. But I can't afford going to a physical therapist or a chiropractor. So it is what it is. It is what it is. I guess I could... No, I'm not gonna. cracking a cold one with the boys. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't actually like that.
Hey now. Oh dear.
No way.
I like that. That feels nice. Please don't do that.
You are too weird. That's pretty okay. Stop that.
Yes, that feels good.
The free roaming and dungeon crawling that was featured in Fire Emblem Echoes was also a mechanic conceived and developed for Fire Emblem Fates that ultimately didn't make it. When asked about features developers wanted to add to Echoes that weren't in Fates, Intelligent Systems' Kuzaki Hara stated, "For one, adding dungeons and allowing the character to roam around freely. In Fates, you can move around my castle and see it over your shoulder view. But the truth is, by then we had already developed a fully functioning roaming function. However, it was not up to the standards we wanted, and so Fates was left with just being able to observe your surroundings rather than move around in it." Bizarrely, unlike other entries, Fates isn't even given a name for its overarching world, simply resulting in the continent being referred to as Hoshido and Nor, a continent named after its two opposing countries. It's a painful example of the missed opportunities that further context and more expansive world building could have provided, and something that Kibayashi may have even already developed in his extensive drafts. Throughout the story of Fates, the player encounters a variety of other locations and tribes, but there is an overall dearth of information and a general lack of context as to their sovereignty in regard to Hoshido and Nor, and so their importance or impact on the overall conflict is left foggy at best. The stark contrast between the Norians' European inspirations and the distinctly Japanese Hoshidans is also not touched upon at all in the game, outside of differentiating the armies and character classes. Some enemies feature prominent historical imagery, like the golems, whose faceplates are based upon the Roman...
The hood's doing good. The hood's doing good. The hood has a lot of back pain, but that's not new. It's just that I touch my back and I feel like there's like a swollen area on one side of my back, and that doesn't feel too promising. It doesn't feel too promising. It is what it is. I had a good breakfast, and now I'm having Juice Monster Pipeline Punch. Yeah. Delicious. Yeah. How's the yummy? How's the yummy? Yeah, I never catch a break. I'm always in pain. I'm always in pain. Because I was thinking, should I ask my dad? Because my dad is not a physical therapist, but my dad was an athlete, like a professional athlete for some time. So he knows about muscles and physical health. But he will have to be home, and he's not home, so yeah. I'll ask him next time he comes over.
An artifact, Boca della Verità, marble manhole covers likely depicting the sea titan god Oceanus. However, there is zero context provided as to the meaning or purpose of their inclusion, outside of them being Roman-inspired like the other European influences present within Nor. Both male and female Kana have critical hit voice clips in the data, which were meant to be specific to each individual route, similar to how Korin's are. Despite this, the clips for both Kanas were never properly implemented. The characters Izana, Scarlet, and Gunter have paired endings with Korin in the Revelation route that also go unused within the final game. The Revelation path, in general, seems to have been the most negatively impacted by rush development. It was pretty harshly panned by players due to its widespread issues regarding unit balance, needlessly tedious map gimmicks, repeated maps and content, and its mostly lackluster attempt at establishing a golden route for the trio of games. Many of its chapters feature characters recruited at bizarrely low levels, causing units to not even be able to deal damage to enemies on higher difficulties. Or they'll even feature unpromoted units later in the game who are recruited alongside promoted units, providing some of the most bizarre game balance in the entirety of the Fire Emblem series. In an attempt to give the player as many characters from the other paths as possible, it also features an extremely bloated roster whose problems are only made worse by an extreme lack of character interaction within its story. This also goes largely unaddressed by the new support conversations it brought. Instead of providing meaningful moments and interactions between characters from these once disparate enemy nations, it instead opts to showcase conversations about planning surprise parties, in the case of Hinoka and Xander, or sewing lessons with Hinoka and Camilla. Its maps, like chapters 10 and 25, are rather infamous amongst fans as particularly tedious, with the former featuring a snow shoveling mechanic where the player must tunnel through ice from one corner of the map to another, uncovering copious amounts of enemies with droppable items, encouraging the player to uncover every single tile on the map in order to find them all, and the latter featuring irritating sliding rooms that move during each enemy phase. Many maps and initial story beats in Revelation are also bizarrely similar to Birthright, almost as if it forgets it's supposed to be the combined story path, and it overall ends up feeling like a transparent attempt on the part of the developers to have everyone become allies as quickly as possible with little regard to logic. Even more oddly, Revelation doesn't even finally give the player the...
Guys, I'm really sorry. We will have to end stream here because Papa Apple just came home. Like, I was like, oh, if only Papa Apple was here to help me with my pain. But yeah, we will have to end stream here. I'm sorry, my dad's literally outside. So yeah, let me see. Yeah, my wish came true. My dad's here. Papa. He's gonna help me with my pain. And probably he's gonna help me with, yeah, thank you so much, you guys. I'm sorry that we didn't do a whole lot. I'm sorry that I couldn't show you my art. Let's go rate someone very quickly. Jesus. Jesus Christ on a wafer. Okay, come on. Okay, let's go raid you. Yeah, let's go raid you. Everybody stay for the raid. Stay for the raid. Raid. Jesus. Oh. Raid. Bio Bang Dragon. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for coming. Raid message. School trip to the bakery. Boom. Copy and paste. You would like to be part of the raid. Oh my god, we need to run. I hope that I can stream tonight. If not, it is what it is, okay? I love you all. I'm going crazy. Goodbye.